Hope for Today is a devotional. And yes, I pull from some of the things that I hear other women say. Some of the things, I have so many women asking for prayer, and you know, so many of them pour their hearts out about their past and what they've been through, but then a lot of that scripture comes from my past and what I've been through. And that is a 10-week devotional. Hope for Today is a 10-week devotional. And every day has a scripture and a hope in action. It's not a big, long, drawn-out devotional. And week 1, day 1, is Isaiah 43, verses 18 and 19.
Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past.
That's right. That's exactly right. And see, I was going through a time a few years ago where that's where I was. I was dwelling on the past. And I had allowed the enemy to come against me and tell me all these lies, and I was feeling rejection, and because I felt that I just didn't measure up. I was unworthy to even be a mother and a wife, and I certainly didn't even need to be in the ministry. And this was all lies of the enemy. And it took me getting in my church and listening to what the pastor had to say, accepting what the word was, because he stood and he started reading scripture. And although I've been in church all my life, and I have read scripture and studied scripture in Sunday school and heard pastors preach a lot of scripture, it was once I finally surrendered that I actually heard the scripture. And it actually began to settle inside. And then that's when the Lord showed me, you know, forget the former things. Do not remember the old things. He says, behold, I'm doing a new thing. He said, don't you know it? Can't you see it? He said, now it will spring forth. Well, I was, looking back on it now, I realized that I was in depression. And I was slipping farther and farther and farther down. Because I had got to where there were days I didn't even want to leave the house. I certainly didn't want to get out of bed. And I only did.
Did you know it was depression?
No, not at the time. I didn't realize it. It was Wednesday night time to go to church, and I did not want to go to church. But I got dressed and struggled and went to church. But I purposely got there late so that I wouldn't have to get up there and sing on the praise team. And I purposely got there late, slipped in, sat down on the back row. And when the preacher started talking, and he started quoting scripture, and he started talking, and he started pointing that finger, and he says, you're making a difference. God's using you. You hang in there. And then that was when, I guess that was my turning point. That was when I began to surrender, because that's when I realized that I had allowed the enemy to come against me in such a way. And see, you give him just the tiniest little area, and he's going to come in and he's just going to totally take over if you don't recognize that and take control. There's a song that I wrote, and it talks about how I looked in the mirror and all that I could see was the broken dreams and promises that were staring back at me. But once I looked past all of that brokenness and all of that pain, then I could see Jesus loving me. Jesus washed Judas's feet, and he washed Peter's feet, and we know Peter denied him and Judas turned on him. And I said, Lord, what are you saying to me? And that was a very profound time, because I felt like God was just whispering into my spirit. He said, oh, Annette, if I were there with you in bodily form, I'd be washing your feet too.